Hello and welcome back to The Perch from the Wyoming Tribune Eagle. I'm Noah Zahn, the local government reporter here. This week, our arts and entertainment reporter Taylor Staples is sharing a conversation she had with Caroline Veit, who is the president of the board for the Children's Museum of Cheyenne, about the opening of the Children's Museum, which is expected to open sometime in February this year, and we've been watching the building go up over the past several months and years from our office right next door. And be sure to stick around for after their conversation. We'll bring you a quick recap of the local news and headlines and what's been going on at the state capitol during the legislative session, as well as some upcoming local events this next week. Here's Taylor.
Hello, my name is Taylor Staples, and I'm the arts and entertainment reporter for the Wyoming Tribune Eagle. Today I'm with Caroline Veit, the president of the Cheyenne Children's Museum Board of Directors, to talk to her about the museum, how we got here, and what the future looks like. Caroline, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation.
And before we get started, would you just like to tell our listeners and us a little more about yourself?
Sure. My name is Caroline Veit, and as you introduced, I'm the president of the board for the Children's Museum of Cheyenne, and I have been the president of the board since 2016. So we've been chasing this for a while.
Sweet.
Yeah. My work that I get paid for, I work for Life Care Center of Cheyenne, and so I'm the community relations director for that, and I've worked there this summer. It'll be 20 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Incredible. Oh.
And then in this capacity for the Children's Museum, it's been volunteer. So we're a volunteer board that has brought the Children's Museum to our community.
That's incredible. And you said since 2016, that's when the board of directors was formed, right?
Well, really, it started in my kitchen in about 2013. And that kind of fall with my neighbor, Amy. She came back from a trip to Indiana, the Children's Museum there, and said, you know what, our community needs a children's museum. And so I've just basically been guilty by association and connected to it then.
I love that.
So we started with some just some community interest in that fall, 2013, and held our first meeting, official kind of meeting of getting together October 9th of 2013. But then we became a nonprofit in 2014. So we've maintained our nonprofit status since 2014. And so we've been chasing it since then.
Yeah.
So we're excited to have a children's museum opening.
I'm sure the vision has changed a lot too since you guys were in your kitchen and, worked on that whiteboard. Can you give some of the listeners a little insight on what was originally on that whiteboard and what some of the biggest changes have been since then?
You know what's interesting is that picture just resurfaced, right around November, I think, when we met up at the donor celebration. And honestly, the vision hasn't changed that much, really. So we've held true to it, even through the years, of bringing a wow experience to our community and also to be a community catalyst. So it's always been kind of a two-part mission. A long time ago, we probably could have been in a warehouse somewhere bringing a children's museum, but really what we wanted to do was change our downtown. And so we feel like in bringing the children's museum and changing this whole half block that was empty for years and years, and now having all the infrastructure that's there, and we're excited for that.
Yeah. No, 100%. And you also said, I don't remember if this was at the Pioneer Supporter Reception or just another interview you had with us, but you said that the pandemic is kind of what made you guys double down and really go for it. So what was it about that time that made you go for it?
Yeah. Well, certainly being in healthcare did. And so I work in a skilled nursing. And during the pandemic, during COVID, it was frightening, frankly. And in about October of 2020, when people were getting very, very sick and very sick at Life Care, I was like, if I survive this thing, we're going to figure out how to at least build a children's museum with the funds that we have. And so again, around my kitchen table with Amy and her husband, Dan, we were like, what do you think? What should we do? Should we just do something really tiny? And they're the ones that, again, pushed our board and said, no, let's go for it. And so that's kind of what determined the size of the footprint that we have now is the funds that we had available at that time. in about end of 2020, beginning of 2021. We began working with our architect, who was Will Wedemeyer. He was a studio red at the time, and they have worked with us all the way through, and so we're grateful for that. We did rebid it in 2021, but Will and his team were determined to work with us. Their name has changed since, and so it ended up being Arette Design was the final architect, but still the same people that were working on it with us. And so they helped us determine the footprint of this first phase of the Children's Museum with the funds that we had and where we were at that time. And then we also bid it, but really the only contractor that would work with us was 5R Construction. So we're grateful for the Fertig family, Ray and Royce, and them that have helped us bring the Children's Museum to our community. You'd recognize some of their other construction that they've done in our community, the Botanic Gardens and many of the schools like Cary Middle School and Junior High. And so that's another one that they built. And now the Children's Museum.
Yeah, incredible that you got them on board then. That's awesome.
They're local, and that's the way it's been all the way along, is just local folks that care to make this successful and have just jumped in. So it's been everybody. It's been some of the public fund and commitment that have helped with the city and DDA and joint powers. And then folks like Alco Fencing who just like, oh, we have that fence. You know what? I really want the Children's Museum to have a better fence than this fence around here. So folks that have just helped jump in. So it's been fantastic in that respect.
Wonderful. And you mentioned your job at the Life Care Centers. How do you feel like being there full time and having that as your day job has helped your approach to the Children's Museum, if it has at all?
Yeah, I guess in some respect I didn't finish answering all of your question about how COVID and the pandemic pushed us to move forward. But the other part of that is that we really wanted to be a bright light in the middle of a really dark time, of something to look forward to, and just kind of be like a beacon of hope in the midst of the pandemic as well. It's certainly taken a while. All projects take time to step through, and especially as a nonprofit VORB that's all volunteer, stepping through that has taken time. But it's been fantastic with the partners that have helped. Like I said, the architect, the contractor, 5R, all of the different players that have been involved. And meanwhile, while we were experiencing that, we were experiencing what everybody around the world were experiencing as far as supply chains issues, labor challenges, and then also just increasing costs, like unprecedented increasing costs. And so also having to continue to fundraise to be able to cover those unexpected costs. So the project, while we started out, we had this perfect pot for construction and perfect pot for exhibits and then also for operations. When we got to the end of it, our project increased significantly, like more than 2 times the amount, almost 3 times the amount of what we initially started, because of all of those challenges, as we started to recover from COVID. And so some of those challenges, it's felt like we've been going uphill all the way through that. But really it was to be hope, bring hope. The other part of that is what we've learned, especially like as we're transitioning and the experience for children and working with stakeholders in our community, like Stride and some of the others like Laramie County schools, working with them, and some of the setbacks that kids experienced because of isolation or having to be school from home, or some of our youngest in some of the social isolation of not being able to go out and experience some of the hands-on experiences and interacting with other little teeny peers, and having to share and those sort of things were just big setbacks for that generation. And so being able to offer the Children's Museum through that was another reason that just kept us pushing forward.
Yeah.
And then in regard to my work and that correlation, I guess the point is no matter what age, just caring about and compassion for people. So whether they're youngsters and teaching Sunday school and having an impact on people's life, or older generation and having an impact on them as well. So I don't know that life care specifically was what was driving it, but just a care about our community and making it better.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's nice, like you're so right. With the pandemic, like it would have been nice to have something like this, even if it, wouldn't have been the right time. But yeah, like this is great for kids, especially now post COVID. I think it's fantastic. And I also wanted to talk on that note about the idea you guys have, the inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility mission you guys have, and just kind of why you feel like that's so important to implement and continue implementing for the kids and everything.
Yeah. I think I mentioned this at that donor event, but one of our first grants that we received was from the Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities. And that was very early on. That was like end of 2014, beginning of 2015. And we worked on that grant, and behind that was universal design. And that's like a precedence within building and within architecture for making sure that you're intentional about all people having access, no matter what their abilities are. So maybe if they're in a wheelchair or blind or something like that, that they would be able to experience the Children's Museum as much as any other type of person. And so that we put a huge emphasis on that, and especially being our first grant. And so really since 2014, we've been working on that and making sure that not only are we call it our vision quest. So it isn't something that we're just like, okay, we're going to think about this, but then we're going to put action to it. And so that really drove the design of our building. So even in this first phase, being intentional about access to the restrooms. And then we've had tons of stakeholder meetings over the years. So going to different organizations and different like school type things and educational opportunities, working with Stride and all different types of families and children, and asking what does your family need? What would you like to see at the Children's Museum? And then particularly with developmental disabilities and being intentional about having those conversations and saying, what does your family need? And one that was so meaningful was a little girl named Caitlin, and shared that her older brother still needs to be changed. So he's 10, but he still needs to be changed. She said, we always have to lay him on the floor. And she's like, we'd just like for you to be thoughtful about that. And so adding an adult side just changing table in our bathroom. So we're working towards that, but we've built our restrooms so that we can accommodate that. And so being intentional about it, but then also taking action and just being willing to hear people's stories and then seeing how we can accommodate it.
Yeah.
So another example I think I gave that night was with Camille. And she is the interpreter at the concert, for a lot of different things for folks, for the deaf community, interpreting American Sign Language. And so she was at the concerts at CFD, and many people were commenting, wow, she's so amazing to watch. I'm like watching that more than I'm paying attention to the concert. And so we just invited her to the Children's Museum afterwards, connected with her through Facebook, and asked her, how could we be more intentional with the deaf community? And she was so eager, one, to have us reach out and to care. And then what that's caused us to do is she signed different we call them our QR codes, our 42 kites, which offer more educational information. And so from that, we learned, I would think myself as a hearing person, looking at the information that we have on these QR codes, well, they can just read what we put down. But she helped us understand that that's like English is a second language to the deaf community. And so they'd have to interpret that into their American Sign Language. And so if we had her sign that on these QR codes, then they could just watch it and it wouldn't be an interpretation for them. I don't know that I would have even realized that, right?
Yeah.
Without having that conversation, without having her come. And then this is another example of where folks just like stepped up and contributed to either the information or the whole project, because then she ended up recording all of the interpretations on all of those 42 kites. And now we offer that for the deaf community. community. And then like her coming there that night, offering it. And while we didn't necessarily have anybody there that was deaf, but just being able to offer the symbol and starting to reach out and people know, hey, this is a safe place. This is a caring place that cares to learn more about it and be able to provide something for me.
Right. And you never know if they have family members that are hard of hearing too, that would benefit from that if they visit or something. Like, yeah, I think that's an incredible like thing to consider when building something this big. Yeah, I think that's awesome. So you feel like community feedback had a big impact on phase 1 even? Do you feel like phase 2 is going to be very similar?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, really, and I think Haley, our executive director, has captured it well. She keeps saying this is a project by the community for the community. And so there would be no reason for that not to stop. And in fact, since the donor event, we've been, one of the things is we had to plan that and not knowing the exact timing of when construction would be finished and exhibits and all that would be installed, which of course it seems like the building's been done. What's been happening? But then it was all of the exhibits. And honestly, that night, even 10 minutes before people started walking in, we were vacuuming up because we weren't finished with our exhibits. And so that's what we've been working on in the last month or so since that's been done. And then starting in January, this past January, we've been trialing soft openings just to see, does this work? What happens? What all do we need to do? And then also not knowing when construction would exactly be done, and then exhibits, then timing that with hiring. Because again, how I said, our operations is very limited. And so in a community that wants to help with that, that's certainly where we need support. But with that, we didn't want to hire too soon and then still be working on finishing all of the construction of the exhibits. And so then in January, we've been working on the soft opening part of trialing all that. And now literally we've been hiring our next phase of staff. And so we just had Beth, our experience manager, so she'll kind of do the front operations. And then just even on Friday, we were doing our interviews for kind of the front staff, front desk type interactive. We call them funcilitators. So.
Oh, stop. That's so cute.
Isn't that fun?
How many people are you guys looking to hire then for the next phase?
You know, we want to start conservatively, and so it'll probably be about 4 staff, but then we also have lots of big volunteer group that we're working with, and we also have it on our website if other people are interested in volunteering, because we can certainly use that. So it'll be a combination of paid staff as well as volunteers for running the Children's Museum. And then as we grow, then we have had some benchmarking other children's museums that we've been working with and kind of learning everything from them. And certainly over the years, we've been a part of the Association of Children's Museums, so we can also look for their precedents and benchmarks that they have. But as we grow, it's kind of limitless, and especially depending what the next phases look like. Probably the next place where we'll grow, though, as for a full-time person, is like our education person that'll focus like on all of the programming that we'll offer within the Children's Museum. Our first phase, and because we had to kind of scale back, our initial exhibits are kind of focused on 0 till about 8 or 9 years old. And just because of our limited space, that sort of thing, of being able to offer that range. Our programs, we want to certainly engage older, kind of the whole spectrum, right, of maybe intergenerational, but also some more like for the teens. We have a partnership with Microsoft, so Girls Who Code, and working on some of the robotics. And so we've had partnerships with local organizations that have supported the robotics program, and then being able to work with a school district on that. So kids that are like in robotics club at school can then also work on it here at the Children's Museum. So kind of developing all of those different programs that We've had lots of folks say, I'd love to offer yoga. I'd love to offer, so we'll see kind of the sky's the limit there as well of what the program we can offer in like our flexible classroom space. And so that's exciting of how that would grow. And so we're just trying to take incremental steps in growing it, starting conservative with our smaller group and then growing.
I love that. That sounds so exciting. Hosting events, because that's what I was going to ask was, so the future phases, timeline wise, when do you foresee phase 2 kind of concluding? And
I mean, we've been so focused, honestly, right, on getting phase 1 up and running and what we have right now. We're looking forward to kind of the summer and some of the stuff that we can grow in that outside lot to the west. And so we have some things poised for that, one of which is a train engine and a little train car for kids and rail, and so that they can play on that. We have kind of a fire engine cab, and we have somebody that are restoring those too. So those will be things that we add to that outside area. And we're really looking forward to that back patio and activating that whole space. So some of the outside. We do own the whole half block. And so part of it, again, is now kind of once getting up on our feet and running with this first phase of then being able to pivot to phase 2 and what that looks like. And like you said, what the community wants. Really, we did this first phase, again, offering hope during a pandemic, but also so that we did give our community a taste of a children's museum and a hunger for more, so that we have the community's buy-in and how that would be. So I mean, certainly it would take fundraising for that and what that can look like. So we have a lot of steps to get through. As far as having very specific, renderings or that sort of thing, we don't have them currently. We did have, when we started, kind of like in 2018, 2019, we did have a full 25,000 foot footprint. Right now we're at 5. And so being able to add to that west lot about a 20,000 foot more footprint, but then we could also go up. So again, it kind of is determined by our community and what our community wants. Community support.
I love that. And then
so we got to dream big. That's what we got to do.
Dream big. Keep aiming for the skies.
Yeah, keep chasing it.
Everything.
One of our themes within right now, even within our exhibit area, is the sky's the limit. So inspiring kids for that, but then us as a community as well, right? The sky's the limit for what our next phases can be.
I love that. That's wonderful. Those were honestly all the questions I had about the museum, about the phases. I guess I just want to end on like, what has been your favorite part of these soft openings, and like some of the favorite feedback you've gotten, and just like, phase 1 in general.
Some of it is really simple, like kids crying, I don't want to leave, but really just the joy of, and that's what we have said. And our board comes together for a lot of different reasons, and we always talk about our why we want a children's museum. Mine has always been for myself, has been to be for kids what I didn't have when I was a kid, and to be able to bring that to our community. But a lot of different members on our board, and certainly our whole community, have come for different reasons. Some have businesses and they want to attract other staff and labor for theirs, and they want to create a amenity within our community that is attractive to be able to attract other doctors or that kind of thing to the community. Other labor. Others have been because they've been to children's museums in other communities and they want it for our community. And so I think that just being able to know the satisfaction of, even though this has taken a while to get to, that we've done it and we're here, and then to keep the dream alive and keep chasing a next phase, because even though this is fantastic and it's been really amazing to see kids in there and enjoying it, and families interacting, and volunteers that are just like thrilled and invested and caring to do more. And right now they're working on a craft drive because they're like, we want to have more art in this. And so continuing to grow, just our acronym for it is STREAM. So science, technology, reading, relationships, engineering, art, and math, and all the different ways that we can grow that and offer those different relationship opportunities and growing opportunities, and really to inspire children for our future, and that our children are worth it, and really they're our next generation. And it's a reflection of our community, what we invest in them, how much we really care about them.
Beautiful. Wonderful. I also wanted to ask just for myself, because I was at Harvey DeSalm's house like a month ago, and I met the artist that might be doing a bronze for you guys. Are you allowed to say
Yes.
at all? Anything about
Well, we have a couple that are commissioned, and so I think one of the amazing things that Harvey has done in our community is, for years, really, right, with his studio and all of the art that he's inspired. So the sculpture, the original vision from the depot to the Capitol, and kind of the historical figures that he's done along there. And then once that worked and people were really in it, and again, I think this is kind of a product of COVID, of where people were like, man, this made me really reflect on my life and what legacy I'm leaving and that kind of thing. And people have just come out of the woodwork to support this, and in fact, maybe their own personal motivation of being able to leave a legacy. And he's like, how about we do animals all the way down 17th from my studio clear to the Children's Museum? And so we have one that's in the works that's on the corner, and I think there's another prospect for the other corner. And then there is a very big one that is inspired for the front, and it is it's at the Foundry right now, and so a summertime reveal for that one. But yes, a very
Exciting.
generous family. I feel like they get to be the ones to divulge that and reveal, especially for the investment. But they wanted it in
Yes.
front of the Children's Museum, and we have the prime spot, and it's really inspirational and fun.
100%. Obsessed.
So we'll stay tuned
We'll
for
stay
that this
tuned.
summer. Yes. But as soon as it's, once I'm free to be out about it, I'll tell you about it, because it is exciting.
Okay. Me too. I'm excited. Well, thank you so much for being here and talking about the journey to get to where we are and where we're going with the museum.
Thanks for caring, and thanks for making it something on the perch to share about. That's exciting.
Yeah.
And now I'm here with Taylor again to bring us a preview of some of the local events coming up in the next week.
Thanks, Noah. Well, starting with Thursday the 30th, we have a teen writing club from 4 to 5 p.m. at the library, and an LGBTQ+ and ally potluck and game night at Sunshine Plant Company from 6 to 9 p.m. Then on Friday, there's the sold-out How to Train Your Dragon live in concert show with the Cheyenne Symphony Orchestra. That's at 7 p.m. at the Cheyenne Civic Center. And then on Saturday, there's a ton of events, such as the Winter Farmers Market at the Cheyenne Depot from 9 to 1, February's Free Family Day at the museum themed I Heart Art from 10 a.m. to 2, the sold-out bingo rave called Bingo Loco at the Lincoln at 7, and the first night of the Cheyenne Little Theater Players annual fundraiser and production of An Evening of Tomfoolery at 7:30 p.m. On Sunday, there's just the second day for CLTP's fundraiser at 2. And into next week, there's a Teen Art Creativity Club on Tuesday at the library from 4 to 5, a vision board making at the library next Wednesday from 3 to 7, and a comedy show called Mo Funny, Less Problems being performed at LCCC from 7 to 9 on that Wednesday.
Great. Thank you, Taylor. I appreciate that, and appreciate you bringing your conversation with Caroline to us this week. And before we wrap up today, I'll bring you a quick roundup of some local news headlines over the past week. Starting off, going back to the Capitol building this week, as we get another update from the legislative session there, our state government reporter Hannah Shields reports that the Wyoming Freedom Caucus, a group of hardline Republicans, is 2 days ahead of schedule in their 5 and dime plan. After winning control of the state House of Representatives in the general election, the Freedom Caucus announced their plan to pass 5 key pieces of legislation through the House within the first 10 days of the session. Only 8 days into the session, all 5 bills successfully passed through the House and crossed over into the Senate, seeing little to no change. The only outlier was House Bill 80, which prohibits state investments in ESG funds, which received 5 bipartisan amendments. The Senate now has an opportunity to further debate and amend these bills before they're all sent back to the lower chamber for a final vote. In other news, volunteers on F.E. Warren Air Force Base played victims in an active shooter drill Thursday morning. The drills are designed to prepare forces for the worst-case scenarios. In this case, an active shooter holding himself up in a theater on base. These semi-annual shooter exercises ensure that security forces and the rest of wing personnel are prepared, according to 90th Missile Wing Public Affairs Chief of Media Relations Glenn Robertson. On Friday, volunteers conducted Laramie County's point-in-time counts, an unduplicated count of the unhoused population on a single day in January. The count plays an important role in federal funding distributed by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, with certain types of grants awarded based on the results of the count. It can also identify gaps in services, and data can be used to develop policy decisions at the state level. And that's all for this week's episode of The Perch from the Wyoming Tribune Eagle. Thank you for tuning in this week, and be sure to tune back in next Wednesday for more.